Thinking about self-publishing and don't know where to start? Join the Spa Girls each week for 30 minutes of honest advice, tips, and resources. I'm Trudy J, and I am here with Wendy Vella.
Hello.
Cheryl Phipps.
Hi there.
And Shah Barrett.
Hi.
That was lucky I got through that. I almost forgot who we were and what we were doing.
Yeah.
I said hello like
Been a whole week.
It was like I was answering the door. I was like, hello.
Who's there?
I think we didn't do this every week for the last 5 years or something. Like, what?
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh. Anyway,
Yeah, hi.
another professional start of the Spa Girls podcast.
Always.
Welcome.
It has been a crazy week, to be fair.
It has been a crazy week. Let's just talk a little bit about all the craziness. Who wants to have an update of Wendy is now in a different city?
Yeah,
I don't think it counts as a city, to be fair.
No, shut up, you.
It does,
I've lived my entire life in a big city, and all 21 years. And now I've moved away, and it's a bit of a surreal feeling, to be really honest with you, because my husband's retired and he's never been home, and he's now home with me, and then we've moved where our children and grandchildren will be in the next sort of month or so. They're moving as well, but we've moved away from our parents and the rest of our support network and friends. And not you. You moved
closer
first,
to me,
just
though.
FYI.
I'm kind of excited.
You both moved first, didn't they, Shah? Remember?
Yes.
And Shah, I've moved away from Shah. So it's like,
just like to say that I did it first and everyone's following me.
Yeah,
I'd just like to say that everyone's left me.
No. Shah, you're going to be joining us very soon. It's like you won't be able to
downstairs, Shah. We've talked about this.
Yeah.
Anyway, the thing is, so moving, and at the same time, I had a book release, and then wrote another book with it in the last few weeks, which is now back for edit. So, I have a lot of boxes stacked everywhere, a lot of things to do, but a husband who's down there just grafting. So that's
fine. You're not going to get it's all resentful about him doing nothing and you doing all the work. It's going to be fine. So actually, let's talk about the topic for this week, because I feel like we've already been going for like at least 5 minutes and haven't actually talked about a topic. So we thought this week we'd talk about dealing with edits and critique, because actually we've all just recently gotten edits back, and we just sort of got to talking about actually how hard it can be to kind of just be almost accepting of people critiquing our babies, accepting, and it's not the easiest thing. And I always remember when, like, I came from a journalism background and I was used to people kind of having a play with my words and things like that, so I always find that to me it's kind of, I love it because it helps me get better. But I always remember Wendy and Cheryl kind of going, don't you dare critique my babies.
Well, we didn't actually say that.
Well, not in that tone. I don't think we used that tone. I mean, it
was definitely that tone. But now, because you guys are so much more experienced with it and you've written all these books, I'd love to talk to you about how the difference between what it was like for you when you first started and now, like how you feel about those critiques when they come back. Because I think that's fascinating, and that kind of might help people listening kind of just get a sense of how to deal with it,
Go share. You go first, because you're more articulate than me.
I have to say, before I was filled with trepidation and fear, and really, I think right at the beginning, to me it proved how rubbish I was, and that I actually wasn't good enough to be an author. But as you get
Are you talking about the critique?
Is that what you felt, or is that what you?
No, that's exactly how I felt.
You felt not that you weren't good enough to be an author.
No, but now I feel like I'm kind of thankful, and I expect, actually my expectations have risen so much that if I don't get enough feedback from a critique, I'm actually unhappy with the money that I've spent, because I want to make it better. That is my job, to write a story, and that is their job to help me make it better. And if I don't get any feedback, then, I don't know, you're kind of left wondering, am I leaving something out? I can't be that good, which I guess is still a bit of negativity, isn't it, really? But I want that. I want to know exactly what I need to do to make it better.
Are you at the stage now where you are totally accepting of the criticism, and you're quite happy to not, like, do you take note of everything and do everything, or now are you quite happy to go, no, I don't agree with that, I'm going to do this?
Absolutely. I take note of everything, and then I do what I think is right for the
even
story.
if it's not what the editor has suggested.
No, and I would say, if we were talking about percentage, I would say it's probably 85% I would take on board and make changes. And the rest is just, like, maybe I don't feel they've got something and I need to leave that in, or by rewriting it, it detracts from something. So those are the incidents that come to me straight away right now. But there's probably other little things, just by changing something somewhere in the story, it often impacts somewhere else. So you have to be careful. And they're not perfect either. They don't get everything 100% right, but you are paying them, so you expect most of what they say to be right.
That's so fascinating, because I think that's the thing that we all feel when we have that first book, that somehow it means something about us personally. When the work is being critiqued, it's like you're so intertwined with the writing and the words. It's like you personally are being critiqued. And that's why it hurts so much. So you kind of took that, you got these critiques back in the first book, and you're like, oh my, that means that I'm terrible and there's something wrong with me. And now, because you've grown as an author, and you know that you have the chops to write these amazing stories, that that any criticism is actually just something that we work on and we can fix. Awesome thing to, like, that's a big massive
well, I think we
change.
evolve, our work evolves, so we should actually, as well, as authors, take stuff on board that we need to, and then just discard the rest, or put it aside for another time, because sometimes that perspective might change and be welcomed back in, whatever it is.
What about you, Wendy? What about when you started?
I mean, when I first started, I don't like criticism, I'll be honest. Who
loves the criticism?
I'm not a big fan of it, but to be brutally honest with you, when I first got it, I think it's more of a neurotic thing than the arrogance of not liking criticism, because I feel like if I used to get an edit and it wasn't good enough, it's like Cher. It's like, well, then the story's crap. It's clearly this story is utter crap and cannot be fixed.
No way to fix it. This is a black or white thing. This is like
it's totally
okay or nothing.
Look at all the
but then nothing trains you for this. Like we've talked about this a million times. I was an administrator and I sold houses. Nothing trained me to get criticism on something that I had poured my heart and soul into, like it's a huge thing. So now I've evolved, thank God. And I got an edit back the other day, and it was quite extensive, and I was like, oh man, this is going to be some serious work. But I know that.
But you didn't make it mean, oh my God, I'm a terrible person. And
no, in my heart, I'm like the lazy one inside of me was like, I've just spent weeks writing this book, and now I have to, like there's that side of it. But then there's also the side of it that my editor gets me. She understands. She knows there's a second book in a series. She's just read the last one last month, so she knows what she's talking about. So those loopholes that I'm going to be plugging.
And you said to me, or said to us just before we came on air, it's not because you can't write, it's that it was a rush, and you had all this, you're moving house, and you had all these other dramas happening around you, and you didn't immediately make it about you. You said, no, I understand why there's a few more edits than usual. And that's fine. Like,
and I'm at the stage now where I know when I get it back, there will be, like she always says to me, not really anything majorly wrong. It's always small, because by now I know how to write a book, but I know that there's going to be, if I change that, I'm going to have to change that, and I'm going to change, but that's just it's just another layer, isn't it? It's another way of doing things. I mean, it's just, you just accept the criticism now, and you just go, well, this is going to make me better. It's going to make it stronger. And that's what you have to roll with. It's just another sort of step in getting a good book published.
And sometimes it's quite true that you send the book off perhaps earlier than you should, because you've got deadlines. You've got deadlines.
We've all done it.
And you know that they're going to pick up more stuff, and it might cost you more there, but you save time in the long run, and your book goes out when you expect it. So you can do all sorts of things. You can change times. You can speak to your editor and put things off. You can do it all sorts of different ways, but you have to accept the consequences of everything you do. So that's one of the things I think that I've learned.
Editing is something you learn. It's a process like writing, you know. I really believe that. But if you think you can put a book out without editing,
so for those listening though that haven't been through this process, can you just clarify what you're talking about, this level of editing, what it is they actually do for you? Like, it's not just typos, is it?
No, these are critiques. This is actually nothing to do with typos at all. This is critiques. This is looking at your book. Well, from my point of view, maybe yours is a bit different, but from my point of view, it's strictly all about the composition, making sure that everything flows, that the story is understandable from woe to go, and everything that I've promised, because I'm writing a mystery, is delivered.
Yes.
So there's nothing, no loose ends or anything like that, and the characters are understandable, and they're doing things that they should do, and not stuff that they wouldn't do at the in any situation.
It's about consistency too, isn't it? Like the content,
Yeah.
And what about you, Triddles? Is that what you do? Do you get
I think I've got a good writer friend of mine who read early stages of the book. It's a bit of it. She should read it before I send it to the editor if I was doing things properly. But she said I send it to her and to the editor at the same time. And so she comes back with some really good, anything that consistency and things like that. And then my editor will do the same. So it's almost like I've got two people coming back. And then the editor also at the same time does the copy edit, like the commas and American spelling and all that kind of stuff. So I sort of get this big lump that I then kind of form into something different. And then I send it back to the editor and they just double check it. And then they also do a beta reader program as well. So that's a second layer of people just reading it. So it's lots of people reading it in that stage. But I think maybe what I'm going to start doing is getting more of that critique level stuff done first. Like I kind of getting the early stages so that you don't get sort of too far down the track and then have to fix stuff. Like don't get it to sort of almost ready to go out and then suddenly someone comes back and says, oh, you've made a big stuff up here. I don't know.
So you mean before you finish the book, or you mean halfway through, like, or when you've completed the story? That initial...
Once I've written it, but like before maybe it's gone to edits, I'm sort of thinking is an extra stage. I don't know.
So what happens though if your critique partner and your editor come back with alternating opinions, or one, they don't pick up the same thing? How do you decide then who to listen to?
I've been in a lot of writing groups in my time, and I've experienced that many times. And what I learned, like what I learned from all those many times, was that you'll actually get people, like I had people arguing like completely opposite viewpoints over a particular scene. And one person said it should be this way, and the other person was like, no, it's ridiculous, it should be this way. Like I'm sitting there in front of them as they're discussing my work, like I had nothing to say in it, and arguing about what they thought. And they were both very good authors, writers. They were very experienced. I thought both of them were amazing, and they would have completely polar opposite ideas of what I should do to make the changes to fix the problem. And what I learned was it gave me indicators of where there was a problem. So they were both saying there was a problem with the scene, and I would get both of their points of view on what the change should be, but ultimately I'm the writer and it's my final decision. And I would look at it, and maybe I made the changes as one of them thought, maybe as the other, or maybe I ignored both of them and I made my own changes to fix what had become obvious was a problem, so sometimes it's just a matter of looking at something. It's your book,
and you do have to take ownership of it.
It does take you a while to appreciate that fact though, don't you think?
Sure.
Like, I mean, it wasn't at the beginning, it doesn't feel like that.
No,
it doesn't
because we're looking for validation, right? Like we're saying there's this external person who must know more than me about this writing thing. And I think you just have to learn that it's your book. And I mean, you're trying to achieve something, and you definitely want that external person to come in and read it and give you their feedback. Like, I'm not saying I don't value people's feedback. I just like, and I'm sure we're all the same. It's like, it is your book, and we've learned what, about writing and how it works, and you have to stand up and have a bit of confidence in yourself and say, this is why I'm doing it, and this is my book. I think
it's like going to a doctor, isn't it? You choose a doctor and you say to yourself, well, they're the experts, so whatever they say is what we'll do. until such time as they prove that perhaps they don't have it all the answers. And then you find yourself someone better.
And just like a doctor, doctors don't know everything about every single illness in the world, and they don't know every single way to fix you. They know the things that are within their purview. They're things that they've experienced before, things that they've learned. No one doctor can know everything, and no one editor can know everything.
No.
And I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Cheryl. You've got to find the editor who works for you. And we have all had different editors, multiple editors along the way, and people who we haven't ended up enjoying working with, but not because the person was a bad editor, just because that we didn't personally work, we didn't like
wasn't the right fit for you.
Their edits were working for us. And that didn't mean that there weren't other people for those editors or whatever, but just you've got to find someone who works for you and he gives you back edits that you really kind of, I don't know.
Somebody who gets your voice and doesn't want to change it too much, but they're steering you to be a better author. And that could come down to simply that they maybe they don't really enjoy reading your genre, or they don't really understand your genre as well as they might something else.
Yeah, you don't want someone changing your voice. No. You just want someone to help grow your voice and to embellish the story, enhance the story to its absolute best. You do not want someone to change the way, because then it's their voice, not yours.
And I just think it's important to point out here that anybody can hang a shingle out and call themselves an editor. So how did you guys go about finding your editors, your current ones that you're happy with?
I think we're all with the same people now.
Word of mouth, really, I would say. Somebody put us onto it, and I'm trying to think of where. It could have been through conference that we heard about ours.
But I just did one through Readsy. I just decided to get a critique from someone, and I just so Readsy, you put up a request, and then you approach 5 different people and ask for and you tell them what you want. So it might be a critique or a developmental edit, or it might be just copy editing or proofreading or whatever. And then you approach these 5 different people. And like for me, I had 5 different ones. One person declined it. So either they couldn't do my time frame or they thought I looked horrible. Either of those options.
I mean, I would have taken one look at
or didn't want to edit that kind of genre.
And then I had 4 kind of people come back to me with quotes, and then I got to pick which one I went with. And so it was really interesting to me because I'd never done that through Readsy before, and so that was really fun.
There are so many options. There are so many. Work with people. You go into those forums you know and trust, like on Facebook, and just put an editor in the search menu, and so many will come up.
And do you know the one that I went with was one that I'd actually heard of before? Like it was just
validation.
It's kind of like not validation so much as more comfortable being with, going with someone who I'd actually heard of, rather than someone who I didn't know from a bar of soap and could have been absolute, like there was a real.
If you're starting out, often if you're reading a genre or an author that you love, often they will credit the editors in the in the sort of front of the book or the copyright section, so you can just look on the sample and see who they use there. But I think getting a sample is a good idea of their editing, isn't it, when you're starting out?
Absolutely, it's huge. And be wary of price as well, because you don't have to pay thousands of dollars to get a book.
So what would you say a ballpark, sort of a general ballpark would be for, say, a 60,000 word manuscript? Are we talking kind of US dollars, say?
Probably share would be better. You're right around
5 to 1,000, 500 to 1,000 US,
I think
or is it too hard?
Anything you want to pay, you could pay
that's true.
$300, or you can pay $5,000, and there's editors who charge.
And it doesn't mean to say that the more expensive one is better than either. This is where it comes back to getting on those groups and finding what is working for people, especially in your genre.
Yes.
I think when you're starting out, that it's totally realistic to expect to get all your edits. So that's your critique and your copy edits, including some beta readers if they can, if that's what they're offering, to get all those 3 done. And those 2 main edits should be done by different people, not the same person, I think. Could have more eyes on it. I think you should be able to get away with that for under $1,000. And I know I never paid anywhere near that when I first started out, because I simply couldn't afford to. So I went a cheaper way, and now I can afford stronger editors that I feel they're stronger for my work. And I do, but I still don't think you have to pay
No.
more than that. I really don't.
I wonder now if we should just get into the process of what
Yeah,
to do
so
when the
that's the
edits
thing.
come back. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
when I very first started, I remember my first
So what
edit
does
coming
it
back.
look like when you say the
you
edits
know.
come back? What do you actually get? Do they ring you
Well,
up and
editors
berate
use
you over the phone?
well, they use something
Yeah, all the time.
Oh, they do the
Right.
yell at you. They send you these long
You get two
letters with just
files.
like, oh my gosh, dirty words and stuff. But the thing is, you get a file
happens.
and it's this. You all probably know what track changes are.
So it's in a Word document?
In a Word document.
Mm-hmm.
Track changes are on. And so track changes mean that's how, if someone takes a word and deletes it, it'll tell you in the column that it's been deleted, and then you can accept it or you can reject it. My process for when I get my manuscript back from the editor is simply I read the comments that she's written on the side, because that's, to me, is what I need to know. That's like telling me about if there's any consistency issues within the book, if the timelines are okay, if the characters are all on, that sort of thing. So I'll read that comment, because that to me is the most important thing. And then I have an editor who then will put the comments all the way through where she sees there's an issue. I don't know what your guys are like. So I'm not good at grammar. Commas frighten me. I'm just not, they're not my jam at all. So I'll go through basically, and so I'll get the punctuation done at the same time. So I'll go through and I'll accept all those, because chances are she's going to be way better at that than me. And then I'll go back and work on all the comments. And the comments are the thing that for me is, so I'll make my track changes, and I will then accept or reject her track changes, so that when it goes back to the editor, it's got my track changes on it. So when it gets a second set of eyes on it, they are looking at my changes over and above their changes, if that makes sense to you.
So not the whole document.
So not the whole document, but what I've worked on, they can look at, and they can go and say, well, she's made these changes, and I'm spelling in that and in the commas in that, because clearly she has no clue. And so that's how I work. And I find I like the way she works, because she doesn't hit me too much at the top. She will just infiltrate all the comments through. Whereas I know Trudy would rather have a 17-page document and read through it. I'm not.
I like it going in the middle. I
have both.
Yeah. Yeah, I get
when I open up my email, I've got two files. I've got the file where all the changes are made, ready for me to accept or delete, and then I've got another 4 or 5 pages of a critique.
Oh wow! I don't get that.
Those
that makes me
all of those
I read
first, and anything that's really, really simple, I'll immediately do and tick off, right? But I don't want to change, accept everything else until I've seen what she's written. And then those comments also float through on the track changes as well on the right-hand side of your Word document. And and I find that having the two things there, I can make sure that everything is covered, because usually whatever she's put in this document is floating through the
she's written the comments in there as well.
So this is kind of like in a brief. So I can go through, and then at the end I can make sure that I've ticked all of those off, that I've covered them.
That's
what
good.
about you, Trudy? What do you do? When you get it? How does it look?
Well, my editor just says it's perfect, and then there are no changes.
You're so lucky by now that you're so good, mate.
It's pretty easy. No, kidding. No, so I'm very similar to Wendy in that she writes her comments and her changes through the manuscript, and I just work through it and accept or change the thing. So one thing with the track changes, so the editor's changes will be in one color, and then any changes I make will be in a different color, so it's really clear when you're reading it that which of my
editor's changes are always in red, like the school teacher with the big crosses.
She does that on purpose. Mine are not in red.
So nice.
My editor likes me, whereas clearly yours doesn't like you.
Mine are in red too.
No, so I just go through and accept them. But I'm like you say that I like the big document, and I think that comes from my that first book that I put out, and I had like a 39-page document that told me every single thing that was possibly wrong with the whole thing. But I really liked that, because I felt like that gave me something to work on.
I would have been a bit sick around about then.
Things to work on. I just want it short and sharp.
So what do you do though if it is overwhelming? Like when if you
go
back
break it down.
Break it down.
Break it down chapter by chapter if necessary.
Yeah.
And the more that that pages that you've got to rectify, the longer it's going to take you. And that becomes your process, is narrowing that down. So making it better before you send it to the editor.
And I think you've also got to make that part of your writing process and understand it's part of the process of the book, because a lot of people will get the edits back and they go, I want to get this done as quick as I can, then I can get it out. That's not how this works. This is part of the publishing process. It must be done properly. You must get it right, because that's what's going to make your book sharper. You've done the bulk of the work, and now you've got to go back and do the tweaking. But for me to start with, it was like, I've got to get through this. I need to get this done. But now I'm just like, no, this is part of the process. It's going to take time to do it.
That's actually really good advice if it's your first book coming out, isn't it? Don't be booking yourself for all these other things like pre-orders and stuff like that if you don't know what your process is, and you can't possibly know it till you've done at least 1 or 2 books.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I like what you say about the editing being part of the process. I think there's, and I know, or at least I feel like for me, I had this idea that once it went from once you'd written the first draft, that somehow was going to be really close to the final thing, and you weren't going to, the editor might give you a couple of changes, but that was, it was fully formed almost. And I think you really have to expect there to be a fair amount of editing at the end, like there to be
You've got to put it into
process.
your timeline.
And I actually really I think like I write that first draft and then I go back and I add now things. Like I think of, like, there'll be certain things like adding an extra layer of emotion, say, that I will put in the second draft that you don't have to worry about in the first draft, for example. Or if you think there's this sort of a subtext or a storyline that you want to add in, that putting it in the second or third edit is the place to put it in. And maybe that was better to happen before it goes to the editor, but sometimes the editor is going to say to you, look, there's this bit missing, and you have to add it in afterwards. So it's just a process. It's not
panicking too, you've paid for an edit, and if they've given you good advice, I used to panic. I used to go, oh, I've got all this stuff to do now, and I finished the book. Oh my gosh, it's taken me however long to write. Surely I'm done. But you're not. And that's why I think actually factoring it in and going, oh, well, this edit's going to take me a week to sort. Or so the book's taken me 4 weeks to write, or 2 months to write, and this is another week added onto that. And then mentally you're okay, well, then I know this is there and this is what's going to happen, because I used to get a bit panicking. The edit came back and I'm like, I've got 2 days, I should get this done. But that's a really important part to get right. And I think if you can get that right from the very beginning, when you're very first starting writing and you very first get your edit back, just take your time. It
takes as long as you need.
Takes as long as it takes.
Though I will say that I like the edit that I did before this. So I've just written a book and it's just come back from the editor, but the edits that I got back before that, I actually totally, because I was messing with my own head, didn't get to them for about a month and a half. And it was all me messing with my own head. Like in my head, I was like, oh my God, they're really big edits. This is going to be really hard. And I don't know how to do it. And I don't know how to approach it. And so I just ignored it and focused on other stuff. And it's like, you can, like any part, I mean, we're all writers. We live in our heads. Like I've just learned over time that it's just so easy to mess with yourself in terms of this. And edits are a really easy place to stop yourself, because you you can build it up into being something that it's not. Like you can kind of be, like you say, oh, it's going to be too hard, or they've made too many, I've got these 10 pages of critiques and it's all wrong and I don't know how to fix it or whatever. And I just think you have to really concentrate on
and you've done the hardest part, write the book. Right? You've done the hardest part. So this is just an added layer onto that. And that's something that,
I went through this. I went through the stage
frustrating.
where I was like, I hate editing. Editing's the worst bit of writing. I love the first. And I think that in itself was like, well, actually that was putting me off. And now I'm kind of like, you know what? I love editing. Editing is a chance to kind of mold this amazing story that you've created and make it molded into something even more amazing. And you're getting that sort of almost like a second chance to kind of get in there and get your hands dirty and make it, make it into this awesome story that people can read.
I just got an edit back, and like, it's extensive, and I know that there's some very valid points in there, and in my head I'm but like, I know that it's
I don't know that changes. I
don't think it does.
Like,
I think
but it's just the fact that you can get over it a lot easier, because you know that you can't do anything with that book until you've actually done the changes.
exactly.
So Shah, what edits have you had back and how have you dealt with it?
So I've had edits and I found it incredibly overwhelming, and I swore that the next time I wrote, I was going to write 1 page a week. And so it was perfect because I just found it completely overwhelming dealing with edits. Like I was fine on the grammar, and like Wendy, the comma thing just freaks me out. Like child of the 70s, they stopped teaching
no commas allowed.
they stopped teaching that in New Zealand at that time. Like, you know, even now I'm kind of like, and I anyway, it was more the, so I got thrown by I thought I had a fairly good handle on the US English versus UK Britishisms, and in New Zealand we have a weird mix of kind of both, and things that I thought were really normal,
everybody would know what you meant.
And that kind of threw me, I think, because I thought I'd spent my life watching American TV, and I spent a lot of time in America, and I read lots of American, but no, those sort of idiot, what do you call them? Not idiots,
idiosyncrasies.
That's the and those other
Idioms.
things.
The American
idioms.
Idioms.
That kind of under, like, my fragile confidence was really eroded by that, which is a weird thing to be eroded by.
But that's also, I think, part of the fact that you never expect it. You know, it's not in your everyday life to get an edit back, right?
No, although here's the thing. So I, when I was doing a particular job, and it was a design job, and I was working for an author, and like she's great at giving critique, and often we'll go through something 10 times, and like Trudy, I think it's the confidence, because I'm comfortable with what I'm doing, but her like, let's not do that, let's go for this, pushes me to get better, and I really like that. I don't see it doesn't affect me personally, because I'm just like, okay, you know, get on the old YouTube and figure that out. So I think it is a confidence thing, and I think you know, I finished 3 books, and I've had 3 edits now.
Is the third one easier?
No, because I haven't done it yet.
It's sitting there waiting for you, isn't it?
Oh, what's that?
Something on your shoulder.
Later.
Yeah.
I definitely, one of them, they weren't expensive edits, but they were good. They were good people. And like I say, it was really the American English thing.
So I think that's a confidence thing. I think
It
you're
is a
linking it
confidence
to
thing.
you as
And
a
you
person.
can write a book.
But
I don't
I
actually see that as a big deal.
No.
I
Because you can
needed
change it just like that.
I needed the couple of sentences that said,
this is a great book.
No, it wasn't a great book. This is basically a good start, but it kind of peters off, which I knew well, because I didn't know idea how to end it. So I knew that, but I just needed that little bit of validation, that little bit of ego stroking at the front. And so I think knowing
that's important. That's important.
Knowing what you
know,
need,
even if
is quite important, I think.
And because some editors won't give you that. Like this is rubbish, and and there's some will be extremely blunt, and some of them will be too kind. There's kind of the spectrum where
you got to have that. Yeah, you got to have that.
So I think it's a little bit of know thyself in there as well.
It's a growth thing, and it's something you learn, and it's just something you have to just get a handle on, and that's the truth of it. And it's never easy. I don't think I've ever got to edit back that she's gone, the angels were singing, it was the best book I've ever read, it should be a Nobel Prize, you know, like it's just not ever going to happen.
Yeah, it doesn't. And all the best authors that you see them saying, you know, I'm just thinking, I think it was Jennifer Armentrout's book that's just out at the moment, and I mean, people love it. It's bestseller. It's all these things, and then you look at her thank yous, and it's thank you to this person for helping with this, and thank you for that person to reading here, and thank you for my beta readers, and thanks my, you know, she hasn't just written this book out of nowhere. She's you know, all these people have given her the edits and the critiques and the beta reading and all that stuff to pull this book together into being what it is today. And
it takes a village to make a book and raise children. Just saying.
So I think the important thing is to remember that it's not, you're not going to be able to do this without an editor, and editors aren't terrible people who are trying to burn your soul or stab you to death
craziness
or something.
Go to bed,
send you to
pull the
mental
blankets over your head.
They're just trying to help you make it better, and if you take it in that vein,
and also they're one person, and I would I've seen a couple of comments lately on forums where editors are trying to really fundamentally undermine the writer, and I think there's a few bad eggs out there as well. So just be careful on that one. I think, as you were saying before, personal recommendation is a big thing, and get that sample as well. That's what I would say.
And I think if you're worried about, for example, someone being too harsh and you not being able to cope with it, ask people for an editor who is kind or gentle in terms of those things. And if you are someone who doesn't care what they say and you just want the critique, then whatever, you probably don't care. But like just
I would still care.
Well, I mean,
I think if I got a brutal, I mean,
oh, yeah.
remember
No,
you
I didn't
and
mean
Shah
I don't mean I wouldn't,
once, you know, and it was like
you cried and then that's your best-selling book. I'm just saying.
It's good that we've moved on from that.
Yeah,
like 5 years ago.
5
good
years.
We're not carrying that with us.
Best-selling book. Later.
Best-selling book.
Best-selling book. Did I mention best-selling book?
Trudy and I are available for the low price of $100,000.
We helped. We
even put myself through
best-selling book.
I tell you.
No, she cried, people. She cried. No, she didn't cry.
I remember anger and throwing chairs, or maybe that's
she was angry at us. I was a bit scared. I thought that was the end
we
of
did it in public because we were nervous about how she would react. So we figured
we
that would
didn't.
be
We
safe.
didn't.
in
Came
public.
to my house. It was at Wendy's house. I don't know why you think
Maybe
we
we should.
were.
I knew I was in trouble.
All righty.
I think we've talked everything to
I
death.
just want to just point out that we've actually talked to a couple of great editors on our podcast, and they're good to listen to. So Anne Victory,
really
I'm going to link them in the show notes. But if you actually just put editor in the search bar on spargirlspodcast.com, you'll find those podcasts. And also Olivia from Hot Tree Editing, which is the Wendy's editor, has been on the podcast as well. In the future, we'll probably get a couple more because those ladies talked about their process as well, how they approach it, and I think that's quite good to listen to as well. So
because they're not all equal, and they don't do things the same way.
And how would you like to receive an edit? If you've never had one before, you probably don't have a huge idea of it. But you know, just by what we've been talking about, would you like to have it in a paper form separate to the actual document? Would you just like it all in one document? I would advise to get somebody to edit that will do track changes, because anything less than that is I just don't even know. I just don't even know how you cope with that.
What else you would do other than track changes? Like,
I've had one that wasn't, and that wasn't fun.
What did they do? Did they just give you notes?
They just write and read.
They just sent like pages of stuff for me to look for in my manuscript.
Oh my God.
And
No, you don't want that. And the other thing I would say is just know timelines. So understand your timelines, what you're looking for, and also understand about you may well have to book an editor out several months in advance before you've even finished the book, which I would always advise as somebody that struggles to finish the book and then find the editor. But if you're confident you can do it, or if you're a few books down the track, then you may have to work with their own schedule. So just kind of understand that, and also how long they will come back, like how long they'll take to do it as well. Communication.
I mean, I think once you get to our level, our stage, when you've written a few, you know, like I've got 2 more edits booked this year, and I probably will chuck another one in there too at some stage. But that's only because we know, you know, what we can do.
Well, you know, you can finish a book when you're sick and you're moving house.
And we also have a call with our editors where they will actually try and work you in somewhere as well.
Exactly. Exactly.
And if you and again, speaking for myself here, if you're getting closer to the deadline that it's due to the editor and you know that you're not going to meet that, it's really let them know ahead of time, and then they can shuffle things around, and then, you know, so again, it's communication goes both ways on this one, and pay them promptly as well.
And just remember you're in control. It's your book.
Yeah,
that's all I want to say on that.
That's all.
We've talked it to death.
Awesome. Well, where can we be found if you want to stalk us at all?
Stalk us.
Well, you can stalk us, but come and stalk us on Facebook at Spa Girls Podcast, and come and look at our website, and you'll see all 280 something podcasts on there over the last 5 years of extraordinary learning and extraordinary topics and extraordinary guests.
Knowledgeable people.
And sign up for our newsletter as well, because you just never know what's going to appear in there. just
And if you
never
want to
know.
see what we look like and the weirdness that faces we make at each other as we are talking about these topics, go to the YouTube channel, which I always think is fascinating.
We're all still adjusting to the YouTube thing, but we love the comments that we're getting on there, and we're so appreciative of all you lovely people that are subscribing to our YouTube channel as well. We really appreciate you. So thank you.
That's awesome.
So enough
all right.
now.
So that's another episode of the Spa Girls podcast. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you again next time.
Bye.
Bye.